The thing about waking up in Austin, Texas is you never really know if the day's going to melt your face off from the heat or just slap you awake with something even nastier. But believe me, nothing, not even the swampy 6 a.m. humidity, could have prepared me for the sight that greeted me that morning. Picture this. I'm standing on my cedar deck, barely awake, coffee still half brewed somewhere inside. And there she is, Brenda Vance, Queen Bee, HOA president, lying on my massive neon pink inflatable flamingo, looking like she owned the place. And well, technically for the last month she kinda had. Her hair was perfect, not a drop of pool water on it, while the rest of her extended family, 7 of them I counted, were doing synchronized cannonballs in my pool. My $30,000 sweat, blood, and tears backyard oasis that until recently was my one solid win after the train wreck of my divorce. The morning air should have smelled like fresh grass and maybe a little bit of chlorine, but all I could taste was cheap coconut sunscreen and a side of pure, weaponized entitlement. I watched jaw hanging as Brenda, still lounging like some medieval baroness, waved at me, calling out some nonsense about community spirit, as if I should thank her for hosting an unauthorized water park in my backyard. And you know what? The worst part wasn't even the busted side gate or the muddy footprints leading all the way to my now coughing, overworked filtration system. It was the sense that I'd lost the last thing that was truly mine, my sanctuary hijacked and transformed into her own suburban kingdom. I could feel the anger in my hands, fingers digging into my pocket where I kept a little baggie of pool shock powder. I wasn't planning anything criminal, just a bit of sabotage, maybe turn the pool water neon green, something Brenda wouldn't soon forget. But I held myself back. Instead, I forced myself to remember how it all began. Here's the real kicker. It started with a handshake and a smile. I was the new guy, the fresh divorcee with a half-decent settlement, thinking maybe I'd finally lucked out with this house in Oak Creek Crossing. The place was as cookie-cutter as you can get, 900 beige boxes in neat rows, everyone forking over $300 a month for community upkeep. My backyard was my one rebellion: imported slate tiles, a saltwater system, a waterfall that could drown out the loudest neighbor's lawnmower. I worked 60 hours a week as a structural engineer just to keep that dream alive. First mistake: showing up to the HOA board meeting. The room stank of old donuts and bad attitudes. Plastic chairs pointed at the front like a courtroom, and there, center stage, was Brenda Vance herself. Early 50s, lips shiny as patent leather, a smile that could sell you the shirt off your own back and have you thank her for it. The way she tapped those acrylic nails on the table, I swear the sound still haunts me. And she called me out by name before I'd even said a word, accused me of unauthorized architectural violations. She had a fat stack of glossy photos, high-res shots of my backyard taken from God knows where. She held them up for the room like evidence at a trial. My fancy new lighting disrupts neighborhood harmony. Never mind that my setup matched half the homes on the street. I was guilty of not filing the proper paperwork. Boom. $2,000 fine. No warning, no discussion. Her husband Greg, the insurance guy with a permanent scowl, just nodded along like a mob enforcer. I tried to reason with her in the parking lot after. The air was thick enough to chew. She twirled her keys, shot me a look that said, "Welcome to my world," and informed me she'd be by for an emergency inspection soon, thanks to some obscure clause she'd probably invented on the spot. Next day, gate ripped off its hinges. Patio furniture tossed around like a frat party aftermath. My custom lights smashed. Citation taped to the door threatening more legal action. It was like she wanted to break me in, show me who ran the place. But that wasn't the moment I snapped. That came a few days later when I looked out my window and saw Brenda's whole clan, kids, cousins, in-laws, treating my backyard like a free resort. My Weber grill, my pool, my lounge chairs, all occupied. I marched outside, tried to assert myself. Brenda just floated by, drink in hand, smiling like she was doing me a favor. Said she couldn't approve my safety compliance unless she'd tested the facilities herself. It finally hit me. This wasn't about a code or some lighting dispute. This was organized theft bureaucracy as a battering ram. Brenda didn't care about rules, she cared about power, and she'd chosen me as her latest project. It escalated fast. One morning there was a knock at my door. Officer Hayes from Austin PD, with Brenda standing behind him, dabbing fake tears. She accused me of yelling at her kids, claimed I was unstable. Her relatives chimed in, all rehearsed, all backing her up. Officer Hayes gave me a warning. Brenda shot me a look that said, "Checkmate." But see, if divorce taught me anything, it's this: never go into battle without receipts. That same day, I dropped $1,000 on a security system, high-def cameras, night vision, cloud backups. If Brenda so much as sneezed in my backyard, I'd know. Didn't take long for the investment to pay off. 2 days later, I got an alert live footage of Brenda showing a well-dressed couple around my backyard, pitching my private pool as a community amenity. She was selling houses off my hard work, jacking up her commissions by pretending my oasis was part of her empire. I confronted her that night, printouts in hand, audio clips loaded. Brenda tried to bluff, but Texas is a one-party consent state. I played the recording, her voice promising shared access to potential buyers. The color drained from her face, slammed the door so hard I thought her porch would collapse. Her next move, she called in every bureaucratic favor she could. Next day, a city inspector arrived, Brenda hovering at his shoulder, whispering about hazardous electrical work. She figured I'd crumble under the pressure. Instead, I handed the guy a binder with every permit, every signed inspection, every receipt. The inspector actually scolded her for wasting city resources. Brenda stood there, hands shaking, her plan unraveling. But Brenda wasn't done. She sent in Greg wearing his official insurance polo, snapping photos for a fake liability audit. I caught him, called his bluff. He didn't even work for my insurer. Thought I'd won until I got an email saying my premium was jumping to $4,000 because of an unsecured aquatic hazard. Some concerned neighbor had filed a complaint. Wonder who that could be. That's when Eleanor stepped in. My neighbor, 73, retired, paralegal eyes like a hawk. I brought her my problem over a couple of strong coffees, and together we dug into the HOA's founding documents. Buried deep was a forgotten clause. I could designate my pool as a community asset, dumping all liability and maintenance onto the HOA and bonus stripping Brenda of her private access. Next morning, paperwork filed, giant community pool sign on my fence. By noon, the place was overrun, kids everywhere, neighbors I'd never met lining up for a dip. Brenda watched from her window, face twisted in silent rage. Her country club was now a public bathhouse. But Eleanor hadn't even hit her stride. She started poking through HOA financial records, found thousands, tens of thousands, funneled to maintenance companies that didn't exist. Nearly $100,000 siphoned by Brenda and Greg for work that never happened. My pool had been the jewel in their little embezzlement scheme. So we assembled a team: Sarah Lynn, forensic accountant with a grudge against authority; Michael Torres, local journalist, always on the lookout for a juicy scandal. We knew we couldn't trust the local cops. Brenda had friends everywhere. We needed a public spectacle, something even she couldn't spin. The showdown was the annual homeowners meeting. Brenda must have felt the walls closing in. Night before my fence got slashed, my pool pump destroyed. Fake health inspectors tried to force their way in. Sarah's window was smashed, her laptop stolen, a typed death threat left behind. Brenda was cornered and getting desperate. An hour before the meeting, Officer Hayes called. Brenda had gotten a restraining order against me, accused me of stalking. I was legally muzzled. But lucky for me, karma has a way of showing up right on time. That night, the meeting room was packed. Neighbors, news crews, tension so thick you could cut it with a butter knife. Brenda took the mic, played the victim, called for my banishment. And just as the crowd started to turn, Michael Torres stood up, camera rolling, and demanded an explanation for the $93,000 in fake invoices. The room went silent, then exploded. Brenda stammered, tried to talk her way out, but Eleanor stood and held up a USB drive, every document, every video. Greg tried to bolt, but ran straight into Officer Hayes and a team of state troopers. The click of those handcuffs was sweeter than any song I'd ever heard. In the middle of the chaos, I slipped over to the decorative fountain, dumped in my baggie of pool shock powder. The water turned a bright radioactive green, a final salute to Brenda's reign. 6 months later, the neighborhood's different. We have a brand new community-funded pool built from the money the courts ripped out of Brenda and Greg's pockets. The place feels lighter, friendlier. And me, I finally feel at home. There's something beautiful about a community that wakes up and stands together shoulder to shoulder against the bullies. It's not about revenge, it's about reclaiming your peace and realizing that sometimes the only way to keep what's yours is to share it. But here's the thing that keeps me up sometimes staring at the stars above my now very secure backyard. Do we only get justice when we fight for it ourselves? When the system breaks, is it up to us to break back? Or is there another way? Maybe there's a line between righteous payback and becoming what you hate, and maybe that line gets blurrier the longer you stare at it. So, what about you? Ever had to stand up to someone who thought they could walk all over you, maybe a boss, a neighbor, someone who just couldn't take no for an answer? Where do you draw the line between fighting back and letting go? Drop your stories in the comments. I want to hear your take on justice power and where you think the real line is. And hey, if you made it this far, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and join the conversation. Let's keep each other honest.